Give me some volume and go full screen.
What you know now, do you wish you had a third term? You know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that.
We know he wasn't really running the country. Yeah. We used to think he was actually running the country, and now they're like, no, he didn't even see those executive orders. That was all auto.
Divorce rumors continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men. Terrible that you would applaud that.
Barack Obama didn't retire. He rebranded. He swapped the White House podium for a Netflix mic and a beachfront mansion, stepping into post-presidency like it was a streaming pilot. Now he's dropping memoirs like mixtapes and serving up advice from a throne built entirely on contradictions. But Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld? They're not buying the act. They're slicing through the polish to expose what's really underneath. All style, zero substance. Get ready for a savage roast, where charisma collides with cold, hard reality, and somehow still walks away with a production deal.
Michelle Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans it.
Joe Rogan starts circling like a shark in waters, thick with narrative-driven nostalgia. You know Joe. If you've ever arm wrestled a bear on mushrooms while breaking down quantum mechanics in a sauna, you've basically had brunch with the guy. He looks at Obama's legacy and doesn't see a statesman. He sees a stand-up comic who landed a Netflix special without ever delivering a punchline. From the very first Let Me Be Clear, Rogan knew there'd be no clarity coming, just the political version of interpretive dance. Lots of motion, dramatic flair, but no real meaning. All movement, no substance.
You know, he was roasting Trump in the audience, and you could see Trump in his head going, okay, I'm going to run now. Like, that might have been the thing that got him to run.
No one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
That one moment where Obama was talking to him might be the reason why Trump was like, I'll show you.
Greg Gutfeld steps in with that signature smirk, the one that practically whispers, I'm about to wreck your carefully crafted legacy, using nothing but sarcasm and a Red Bull. And honestly, Obama handed him a masterpiece of material. This is the guy who won a Nobel Peace Prize before he even found where they kept the light switches in the White House. Then spent the next 8 years drone striking half the Middle East while being serenaded by Hollywood elites. It was like watching a self-declared pacifist win a UFC title before the first round, then charge into the octagon wielding a steel chair, backed by a gospel choir of swooning journalists.
Can I get a glass of water? I'm serious. I'm thirsty. Can I get a glass of water? This is not a prank. You never seen it?
No.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh,
it's amazing.
No.
He gets a glass of Flint tap water, and I swear to God, he drinks it like this.
Problem
He's
is solved?
bullshitting the world. Watch this.
Can I get some water? I really did need a glass of water. This is not a stunt.
Usually when something isn't a stunt, you have to say
It's
that.
100% a stunt. When was the last time a president stopped a speech to ask, can I get a glass of water? What? They would never do that. They would have water ready for him. No, you bring a fucking water on tape.
Is Obama gay, needing attention over an old letter? What? I should read that again. Anyway, no, we'll just keep going. The New York Post obtained a redacted portion of a handwritten letter the former president sent to his then college girlfriend, Alex McNear. Alex, eh? Back in 1982. He talked about his, quote, androgynous mind and wrote, and I'm quoting Obama here, I make love to men daily, but in the imagination.
Barack Obama strolled into history with a pen a teleprompter, and the swagger of a man who genuinely believed hope counted as a long-term policy plan. It's almost poetic. 8 years of soaring rhetoric, carefully choreographed pauses, and yet, somehow he managed to say absolutely nothing. His presidency felt like a TED Talk wrapped in presidential seal and Secret Service. Deep-sounding words, hollow outcomes, and a fan base that erupted in applause like he'd just cured cancer every time he so much as raised an eyebrow.
Obama, during this Kamala Harris administration, it changed my opinion of that guy.
Really? Did you have a high opinion of him before?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did, just as an intelligent person. Right. But watching him just straight up lie about Trump, the thing that got me was that very fine people thing, the white supremacist thing. They just kept trying to say that he was a racist.
Who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally?
Which is this thing that I think worked in like 2017.
Yeah.
You know, I think it worked back then. I don't think it works anymore. I don't think people believe.
Greg Gutfeld whips out the legacy paintbrush and starts flinging sarcasm like Jackson Pollock at a White House portrait. His target? The Iran deal. Foreign policy's equivalent of placing a Vegas bet on a roulette wheel with half the numbers missing. You hand billions to a regime literally chanting, "Death to America." Then walk away grinning, like you just scored backstage passes to Reason magazine. Gutfeld paints the scene. Obama, blindfolded, shaking hands with the Ayatollah, pen in hand, surrounded by diplomats who all studied different versions of the script. It wasn't diplomacy. It was improv with nukes on the table. Then comes the immigration paradox piñata. Here's a president who deported more people than any of his predecessors, yet gave speeches that sounded like bedtime stories for progressive activists. Rogan jumps in with the visual. Obama standing solemnly in front of the Statue of Liberty, speaking about hope and inclusion, then yanking a trapdoor lever that drops thousands of dreamers straight into limbo. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a mirage, a carefully staged illusion, wrapped in press releases and sold like compassion on clearance.
Yes. Let's admit it, America. We miss Barack Obama.
Juan does.
There he is. In a recent speech, he said he had no real scandals in his White House, a jab at Trump.
We didn't have a scandal that embarrassed us. I know that seems like a low bar. Generally speaking, you didn't hear about a lot of drama inside our White House.
No drama. So to quote the TSA officer whose dog just sniffed my carry-on, let's unpack this. So why didn't you hear much about O's White House? Well, who was brave enough to look? There was never a cozier relationship between a president and the media, ever. If the White House were a bed, the press was the mutt dozing.
Joe Rogan dives into the cultural chaos like a cannonball into a pool of Tumblr hashtags. Under Obama, America didn't just drift into identity politics. It dove headfirst, splashing everyone in the face with a tidal wave of pronouns, privilege checklists, and performative hashtags. Rogan, who lives for uncomfortable truths, couldn't help but call out the irony. The man who was supposed to unify the nation ended up slicing it into more hyper-specific subgroups than a Whole Foods snack aisle. Unity, that got traded in for curated division. Cue Gutfeld, who rolls his eyes at the idea that you needed some Ivy League decoder ring to understand Obama's brilliance. No, all you needed was a strong constitution and the ability to sit through an hour of high-gloss nothing without slipping into a coma. Because for all the elegance and eloquence, the substance was often MIA. Then Joe grabs the mic and takes a blowtorch to the surveillance state, the shadowy behemoth that exploded under Obama, like a dystopian sequel no one asked for. The NSA wasn't just tracking terrorists. They were probably eavesdropping on grandma's banana bread recipe and live texting your dentist appointments. This was the man who campaigned on transparency, then built a digital panopticon, handed the keys to the deep state, and topped it off with a charming wink. And the kicker? People applauded, like he had just handed them freedom, instead of a wiretap with a side of polite betrayal.
Because Obama said he was a jacket.
The young lady seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award. What's he doing up there? He's a jack.
It's like, oh, really? Well, f*** you.
It was about the Taylor Swift thing.
Now, all this stuff.
That guy's a jacket. It wasn't even that harsh of an insult. And he said it privately, and I think somebody heard it. I don't think he said it to be public.
I'm assuming all this stuff. Where's the pool? Come on, guys.
cut the president some slack.
Oh, here it is.
Seems like a perfectly nice person. He's getting her award.
Why would he do that?
He's a jack. No, this...
Gutfeld takes on the economy and roasts it like the driest Thanksgiving turkey ever served. No gravy, no flavor, just a heap of overpromised disappointment. He drags out Obama's infamous shovel-ready jobs pitch and turns it into a Broadway farce. Shovel-ready? The only thing ready was the public's willingness to believe anything wrapped in poetic delivery. It was like ordering a steak and getting a scented candle. The recovery crawled out of the 2008 crater like it had a hangover from the campaign slogans. But hey, if success is measured by how many times you can say recovery summer without bursting into laughter, then sure, Obama crushed it. Joe Rogan jumps in, savoring the irony of Obama going full Wall Street while cosplaying as Main Street's Messiah. The man hit up Goldman Sachs events with the energy of a roadie who forgot his guitar but still showed up to jam. He bailed out the banks, let homeowners sink, then strutted across the stage like he taught America how to swim. It was the political version of robbing your neighbor's house and getting a thank you note for saving the neighborhood. Then Gutfeld picks up the healthcare mic, wielding sarcasm like a scalpel. Obamacare, the crown jewel of Obama's domestic legacy, was sold like a miracle tonic until people realized it was basically a Groupon for medical confusion. It was billed as universal care, but felt more like a choose-your-own-adventure novel written by the DMV. And that website launch? A disaster so epic, it made MySpace look like Amazon Prime. Yet there was Obama, smiling through the digital collapse like a wedding DJ who doesn't realize the speakers are on fire.
Do you remember when they gave that speech, when he gave a speech on television, and everybody was like, fuck this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they were, it kind of just went away.
It was one of the most beautiful moments in modern American history. People really actually stood up and stopped a war from happening.
Today, I authorize the Armed Forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya in support of an international effort to protect...
Gutfeld's not letting the education debacle off the hook. He lights it up like it's open mic night at a school board meeting. Obama, he says, did more to empower teachers' unions than to actually rescue the failing schools that needed saving. The guy is worshipped by academia, yet presided over inner-city education systems that crumbled like overdue textbooks, while greenlighting studies on whether squirrels have seasonal climate anxiety. School choice? Hard pass. Parental involvement? Optional. But if you wanted a 40-slide PowerPoint on systemic barriers, Obama had you covered, with a battalion of consultants and a side of smug. Then Joe Rogan steps up to land the roundhouse finish. Obama, he says, was the smoothest salesman on earth. But at the end of the day, all he was selling was air. Cool, minty, expertly branded air. He made you feel like you were part of something historic, while your insurance premium tripled and the VA hospital couldn't even remember you existed. That's the magic. That's the con. He didn't govern. He narrated the slow-motion decline of America with a velvet Spotify voice and a mid-range golf swing. And both Rogan and Gutfeld know the roast isn't over. Not even close. There's still glitter to scrape off the illusion, still myths to bust, still symbolic trophies collecting dust in the moral trophy case of a man who turned charisma into currency and speeches into substitutes for substance. Just when you think the curtain's down, Obama pops back up, new memoir, new Netflix deal, every 14 minutes, like clockwork.
President number 44 wants to help the left censor more. Former President Obama, if that's his real name, is launching a campaign to stop the spread of disinformation, which he called a real challenge for our democracy. And also for his former Veep, who's challenged by questions like, what's my name and why am I nude in the Rose Garden?
Joe Rogan dives into foreign policy like a pit bull tearing through a pair of overpriced Italian loafers. He's not here to politely dissect diplomacy. He's calling it like a UFC ref watching a fighter tap out under a hailstorm of strategic airstrikes. When it comes to Obama's infamous red line in Syria, Rogan sees it the way a survivalist sees a broken compass. Completely useless, and somehow still dangerous. This was a president who threatened a brutal dictator with all the intensity of a school principal warning a kid not to cut the lunch line. Spoiler alert, Assad didn't flinch. Not even a blink.
Tweeted Obama, part of the reason it's hard to bring about change is because we live in a media environment that elevates falsehoods as much as truths and divides people as much as it brings them together. Through the Obama Foundation, we're working to empower and equip emerging leaders to tackle issues like the spread of disinformation. Of course, as plenty of people immediately pointed out, it was Obama's Democratic allies who cooked up the Russian collusion hoax. Or how about Nick Sandmann, hands up, don't shoot, don't say gay, or the Hunter laptop story. They're all stories where the public was shielded from the truth with help from the Democratic-friendly legacy media, who try to diss any information that threatens their narrative. And by narrative, I mean load.
Rogan throws a haymaker straight into Obama's post-presidency glow-up. Here's a guy who's now a global influencer, hosting podcasts, running a production company, and preaching personal responsibility from the top floor of an oceanfront mansion. It's like watching someone who sold his soul for applause now sell inspirational merch to the same fan base, shrink-wrapped in nostalgia. Joe nails the absurdity. You don't get to warn the world about rising sea levels while sipping Mai Tais from a property 5 feet above Atlantis. Greg Gutfeld jumps in and goes straight for the race card, but not the one everyone expects. Obama had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unify, to genuinely heal, to fulfill that post-racial promise. Instead, he grated division like Parmesan, subtle, constant, and always on brand. Gutfeld envisions him delivering speeches like a philosopher, while quietly ghostwriting the user manual for cancel culture. It wasn't about moving forward. It was about painting dissenters as morally defective, using poetic guilt as a policy weapon. Disagree with his healthcare plan? Suddenly, you're morally bankrupt and one amendment away from being labeled subhuman. And Joe? He doesn't let the arrogance slide. That signature smirk, that slow professorial head tilt, it wasn't confidence. It was the political version of an eye roll. Rogan calls it Harvard swagger, where the IQ is assumed, the answers are preloaded, and the accountability gets outsourced to the nearest press secretary. If the question didn't come from Vanity Fair or a room full of Ivy League interns, Obama acted like it didn't deserve oxygen. When it came to real criticism, his skin was thinner than the 2010 economic recovery curve.
What they're doing. Or you go after other Democrats. Let the primaries start now. Go after Newsom or, go after Fetterman. Go after somebody. The media will gobble that up. Or you go after some foreign leader. Take an axe to Chi or go after the cartels or something. Get yourself banned from travel somewhere, okay? Mm-hmm. And then go after some CEO. Go after some big fat cat CEO that's just like hurting his workers and just running up prices. Go after that guy. And then you go on Rogan and you laugh at yourself. That is the recipe for getting attention without going after Donald Trump. Because every time you clash with Trump, you lose, and you look like you don't care about the rest of the American people.
And we've talked a lot about how the Democrats are trying to find the answer to Trump. They're trying to find the analog to him. But part of Obama's comments, too, he said, stop looking for the quick fix. Stop looking for the Messiah. You have a great candidates running races right now. Just focus on what you have in front of you.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you listen to Obama and you look at these inorganic protests, they say you have to have courage, rally, act, resist, but they don't. For what? What is the actual issue? When Trump owns every issue 80-20 by almost every metric, from the economy to crime to immigration, where are you? The high ground maneuver of common sense has relegated it into more extreme measures. Ask Obama, okay, where do I apply this courage? What space do I park it in? Should I double down on trans dudes in women's sports? Should I back the attacks on ICE? Should I show courage?
Gutfeld swoops in on the celebrity bromances, like a hawk spotting weakness in a red carpet parade. From Beyoncé to Spielberg, Obama wasn't running the country. He was curating moments. Every state dinner felt less like diplomacy and more like the Oscars, just with slightly more nuclear codes. Greg paints the picture. Obama standing in front of a mirror, rehearsing his speech cadence by candlelight, the air thick with the scent of Tom Ford cologne. This wasn't leadership. It was aesthetic governance, complete with a jazz playlist and a full-time fact-checker on retainer. Joe Rogan shifts the spotlight to Chicago, because how could he not? It's the city where Obama cut his political teeth, while conveniently ignoring the sky-high crime, crumbling schools, and generational poverty unfolding right outside his office window. Rogan calls it what it is. You don't get to fly over a crater and call it a garden. Chicago was a living, bleeding reminder of everything Obama claimed to champion, while doing little more than raising campaign cash and playing rhetorical jazz over the casualties. Then Gutfeld smashes the climate change charade like a solar panel in a hailstorm. Obama showing up to climate conferences aboard Air Force One, leaving with a tote bag of broken promises and recycled buzzwords. He handed out green job pledges like a kid passing lemonade coupons during a snowstorm. Sounds nice. Goes nowhere. Greg cracks that Obama probably had a solar panel installed on his golf cart just so he could flex on the Martha's Vineyard fairway. Because in the end, it wasn't about saving the planet. It was about looking really good while pretending to.
If you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, like, folks who make me mad.
So let's analyze. He says Fox goes out of its way to locate and then demonize the poor. For what reason? So we can kill and eat them? His criticism is absurd because he never suggests a motive. FNC is always focused on policies that keep the poor poor, not the poor that...
Joe Rogan can't help but laugh. And it's that "you've got to be kidding me" laugh. Here's a guy who spent 8 years sidestepping accountability like it was a contact sport, now out here selling life advice like he's the Dalai Lama, with a drone license. This isn't leadership, it's lifestyle branding. The presidency? Just season 1 of the Obama streaming franchise. Gutfeld pounces like it's the last punchline at a comedy roast. Obama didn't retire. He rebranded. Now he's out here pitching documentaries on American struggle from a multi-million-dollar estate with tighter security than Fort Knox. At this point, reality needs a background check just to make it past the front gate. Joe snorts at the irony, because Obama taught America to worship symbolism over substance. And now he's cashing in like a Silicon Valley guru who just realized keynote speeches pay better than policy. The country didn't get better. It just got better at pretending things were profound, because they were delivered slowly, with gravitas, and a perfectly tailored pause. And behind all that inspiration, still the same polished nothingness, just wrapped in a designer suit and sold back to us with an inspirational hashtag.